After 18 years at Pacific Horizon Media and Events, I sat in the corner office I had practically built from the ground up, surrounded by equipment I'd bought with my own money, systems I'd developed from scratch, and memories of deadlines that nearly broke me. The small wooden plaque on my desk read, "Chief Problem Solver," a gift from my team years ago. Now the joke was on me. Marianne, my boss Colin Wright, said, without meeting my eyes, "Due to restructuring, we're eliminating your position." I blinked once. The hum of the air conditioning filled the silence. He went on, "We've hired a new coordinator just graduated from college. She'll be trained to handle media event logistics and, well, everything you've been handling." This wasn't just a layoff. It was a clean replacement. A fresh budget line. A calculated reset. After nearly 2 decades of doing 5 jobs for the price of one, it felt like a slap in the face. "I understand," I said evenly. "Not the logic, but the message. You're too old, too expensive, too difficult to control." Colin exhaled, relieved I wasn't making a scene. "You'll need to clear your office by Friday," he added. "And take everything that's yours. You won't be coming back." I smiled slightly. "Of course. I'll take everything that's mine." 18 years ago, I was hired as a media designer. Just that. When the marketing director quit, I stepped in. When the event lead froze during a 700-guest gala, I ran the show. When the AV supplier bailed an hour before a conference, I sprinted to my car, grabbed my own microphones, cables, and lights, and made it work. The company never replaced missing gear, so I kept bringing mine. Piece by piece, year after year. Camera rigs, lighting kits, backup cables, mixing consoles. Every piece marked with my initials MW just in case. They always laughed at that detail. That detail was about to become everything. What Colin never noticed, what no one bothered to check, was that their entire AV backbone, live streaming setup, and portable event rig were mine. Not figuratively. Legally, literally mine. By Thursday morning, I arrived early. Before Colin. Before the new girl. Before HR. And I started packing. The first few boxes were easy hard cases labeled with mic stands and mixers. Then came the lights, wireless cameras, HDMI extenders. Every receipt neatly stored in a folder on my laptop, ready for anyone who dared to question ownership. Labeled hard cases stacked by the door held microphones, stands, and mixing consoles. Next came the modular lights, wireless cameras, and HDMI extenders. Every receipt was saved in a neatly organized folder on my laptop, ready for anyone to challenge ownership. Then came the crown jewel, the control booth. Colin spotted me as I was unlocking the door with my own key. "You can't take that," he stammered. "Oh, why not?" I asked. "It's essential to our event setup." I raised an eyebrow. "Yes, it is. That's why I brought it in." "Want to see the receipts?" He hesitated, then waved vaguely toward the hallway. "Well, maybe just leave the booth gear. At least until we train the new coordinator." I smiled sweetly. "You said I wouldn't be coming back, Colin. I'm just doing exactly what you told me to do." I loaded up my Chevy Suburban with the help of Renee, one of the only coworkers who still had a soul. With each box we carried, Colin's expression grew more strained, like bad lighting at a gala. Renee leaned over and whispered, "I can't believe you're actually doing it." By noon, half the storage closet was empty. Every case labeled MW was mine. I knew because I'd labeled it myself after countless nights spent organizing, repairing, and replacing gear no one else bothered to maintain. By 2:00 p.m., the livestream equipment was gone. By 3:30, the backup servers I'd supplied for remote events gone too. Colin paced the hallway, phone glued to his ear, muttering into his sleeve. They thought I was replaceable, but they never asked the obvious question: what if everything we rely on walks out the door with her? When I finally pulled away, my SUV sagging under the weight of the company's forgotten foundation, Colin stood at the curb, silent, looking like he'd just seen the budget go up in flames. Friday was my last day. Monday would be interesting. Because Monday Pacific Horizon Media and Events had a high-profile corporate summit with over 350 guests, a live broadcast, and multiple feeds across 3 cities. And now, they no longer had the equipment. Or the woman who knew how to run it. That evening, driving home with my Suburban packed tighter than a moving truck, every bump made the lighting kits rattle, the mic stands shift. I glanced in the rearview mirror at the gear that had powered hundreds of galas, conferences, and launches, and remembered something my dad once told me: never loan out what you're not willing to lose. Paranoid much? Colin used to joke whenever he saw my initials on a piece of gear. Now I imagined him standing in the empty AV booth, finally realizing how much of his precious infrastructure had never belonged to the company at all. By the time I pulled into my driveway, it looked like a production crew had moved in. My neighbor Tom leaned on the fence with a cold beer. "Big shoot this weekend?" he asked. "Not exactly," I said, exhaling as I popped the Suburban's trunk. "More like the end of an era." He offered to help carry the cases inside. As we stacked boxes neatly in my garage, I gave him the short version: how I'd been let go, replaced by someone cheaper, told to take everything that was mine, and how I had. He let out a low whistle. "So what are they gonna do without all this?" "That's their problem now." Saturday morning, I opened my laptop and checked Pacific Horizon's public events calendar. Monday was the big one, the West Coast Education Leadership Summit. 3 cities, multiple remote panels, a keynote from the state superintendent, and a live stream for over 2,000 viewers. Every year, I had made it happen. I knew their playbook inside and out, every piece of gear required, every setup quirk, every backup plan, every spare cable no one else remembered to bring. If you want to follow the twists, victories, and lessons from stories like mine, make sure you subscribe. The next chapter is one you won't want to miss. And I knew that without me or my equipment, they were in trouble. But I wasn't smiling. Not really. This wasn't about petty revenge. It was personal. 18 years of giving everything, missing birthdays and anniversaries, staying up until 2:00 a.m. to fix a crashed feed because no one else could. I trained interns, built workflows, prevented disasters before they even happened. And in the end, I wasn't worth a real explanation. Just a corporate line about restructuring and a 20-something with a shiny diploma waiting to take over my life's work. Sunday afternoon, I got a text from Renee. "Hey, just a heads up, Colin's calling people in a panic. Something about missing AV inventory and a broken livestream plan." I sent back a simple emoji. 30 minutes later, she called. "Marianne, I know you're done, but I have to tell you they had the new hire try to set up tomorrow's summit. She doesn't even know what a DI box is. Colin actually asked if they could just run it through a couple of laptops on Zoom." I couldn't help it, I laughed. I almost laughed, or walked out. Instead, I closed my eyes. It was even worse than I thought. "And the venue?" I asked. "New location this year?" Renee said. "No built-in AV. They'd been counting on my kits, the wireless mics, the camera rig, the switcher. All of it. Gone." She hesitated. "Colin asked if I could maybe reach out to you. You know, just for a little help." I didn't answer right away. After a long silence, I said, "I wish I could help. But I'm just doing exactly what he told me." I took what was mine and left. "I don't work there anymore." Renee sighed. "Didn't think you would. Just figured you should know what kind of chaos is coming." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I walked into my garage and flipped on the lights. Dozens of cases sat neatly stacked and labeled. I ran my fingers over the lid of the road case holding the wireless transmitters, over the charger dock for the LED uplights, over the laminated emergency cable chart I'd created during a 3-day power outage years ago. They hadn't just fired me, they'd amputated their only working limb and handed the scalpel to someone who didn't even know which side was sharp. And now they were about to try walking on their own. Monday was less than 12 hours away. I made a cup of tea, opened a new document on my laptop, and started writing not a resignation letter, not a rant, but something better, a pitch. After 18 years of being the invisible engine behind other people's success, I finally had the chance to build something for myself. If Pacific Horizon wanted to burn down what we'd built together, I intended to rise from the ashes. I was halfway through my tea when the first call came in. Anonymous number. I let it ring. Then a second call, this one from the company's front desk. Still no answer. By 8:00 a.m., I had 3 missed calls, 1 voicemail, and a text from Renee. They're falling apart. I've never seen Colin like this. I believed her. I knew exactly what they were walking into. The West Coast Education Leadership Summit was their biggest spring event, spanning 3 cities each, with its own tech setup requiring flawless live streaming, interactive Q&As, backup feeds, and content switching. I had built every part of that process from scratch, color-coded cable routing, custom overlay graphics, and now all of it was gone, still sitting labeled and dust-free in my garage. At 8:32 a.m., Colin's voicemail came in. His voice was clipped and tense, the sound of someone who'd had too much coffee, or not nearly enough sleep. Marianne. Hi, this is Colin. Look, I think there may have been some miscommunication about what equipment belonged to the company. We really need you to clarify a few things. Urgently. This event is going sideways. Please call me back ASAP. I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop and kept working on my pitch deck, the foundation for my new consulting and technical support business for nonprofits and education conferences. Simple, clean branding, flat rates, transparent services. My tagline was almost too perfect. You don't need an agency. You need someone who gives a damn. At 9:00 a.m., Renee texted again. They're trying to run everything through someone's personal iPad. The sound keeps cutting out. Audience is restless. One of the panelists just said, "Can anyone hear me live on stream? They're asking for your setup diagrams." I told her I didn't have copies. I do, but they're not free. I smirked. Renee had always been loyal, and now they were finally realizing who their real backbone had been. By 10:15 a.m., my inbox lit up again. This time, it was from Maya Pacific Horizon's marketing director. Hi, Marianne. I hope you're doing well. Colin asked me to reach out and see if there's any chance you'd be available for a quick consult today. He's willing to compensate you for your time. Please let me know if there's any way you can help. I stared at the email for a long moment. Consult. Not help. Not save us. Just consult. Which legally meant billable hours, progress. But I didn't reply, not yet. At 11:00 a.m., I finally allowed myself a moment to breathe. Tea gone cold. Email piling up. I walked out to the garage and opened one of the hard cases, taking inventory. Everything was still pristine, ready to deploy. Ready to earn me money instead of building someone else's empire. By noon, Pacific Horizon's livestream had been pulled offline. I didn't need Renee to tell me. Social media was already buzzing. A few conference attendees had tweeted about the failure. Biggest education event on the West Coast can't keep their feed live for more than 30 seconds. Embarrassing. They fired the person who used to run this. I just sat back in my chair, sipping fresh tea, watching it unfold. At 12:46 p.m., Colin called again. This time I answered. Marianne. "Oh, thank God," Colin blurted. I stayed silent. "Look, this whole thing has gotten out of hand," he said quickly. "I admit it. I didn't realize how much of the AV gear was actually yours. I should have asked more questions." Silence. "We need help. Just a few hours. I'll pay you personally if I have to." I finally spoke. "I appreciate the offer, Colin, but I don't do last-minute emergency calls for people who told me I was replaceable. I never said you didn't need to," I cut in. "You said restructuring. You said, take everything that's yours. So I did. And now you're seeing what I left behind. Another pause. Marianne, please. I sighed. I'm happy to talk business. Not favors. Business consulting contracts rates, you know, the kind of professional respect I never got when I worked for you. Okay. Okay. Can you send over your terms? I already did. What, check your inbox? Because 15 minutes earlier, while he was busy scrambling, I had sent a branded quote with my emergency same-day consulting rate 4 times my old hourly salary. And he had exactly 2 hours to accept before I turned off my phone. By 1:00 p.m., he'd signed. By 2:00 p.m., I was logged into their temporary stream, remotely stabilizing it with the same software I'd used for years, and walking Renee through a patched-together version of my original event workflow. By 4:00 p.m., my invoice was paid in full. No apologies, no recognition, just a confirmation email and a single line at the bottom. Please keep your availability open for future events. I closed my laptop. If they wanted me, they'd pay my rate. Not because I was bitter, but because knowing your value is only half the battle. The other half is making sure no one gets it for free. By Tuesday morning, I already had 3 new inquiries. Not from Pacific Horizon, from their competitors. One was a mid-sized conference group that had followed the West Coast Summit livestream and noticed something odd. The stream quality had improved mid-event despite obvious hiccups earlier in the day. They called it a mystery save. I just called it business. The organizer called it a mystery save. The second inquiry came from a nonprofit in the education sector. They'd been at the summit. Their director caught me during the awkward lunch break and said, "I don't know what happened this morning, but someone fixed it." "Was that you?" I simply nodded. "You freelance?" he asked. "I do now. I didn't sleep much that week. Not from stress, not anymore, but because something inside me had clicked. Something I hadn't felt in years. Momentum. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was building. Every document I created, every client conversation, every minute spent updating my old logo, it felt like I was finally pouring all those invisible hours into something that was mine. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about how it had all started. 18 years, no formal title changes, no bonuses for overnight fixes, no official acknowledgement when I prevented a major security breach during an international live stream. I was always just the media designer, even when I was also the AV lead, the backup coordinator, the vendor liaison, and the person climbing scaffolding at 6:00 a.m. to tape down a cable no one else noticed. And Colin. He was already shopping for his next intern. By Thursday, Pacific Horizon had another problem. They were set to host a product launch for one of their major clients, a long-term contract that had been Marianne dependent from day one. The client, a large tech firm, required a full mock run of the event 48 hours in advance. Standard procedure. What wasn't standard was that the moment the client walked into the venue, they knew something was wrong. No signal flow, no directional monitors, no backup rig, and no me. Renee called from the backloading dock, whispering, "They're trying to fake their way through this setup." The client's head of communications was furious. He literally said, "Where's the woman who usually runs this? We don't want kids with clipboards. We want the expert." "Let me guess," I said. "They're stalling. Badly." "Colin's sweating through his blazer," she replied. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered Colin sitting across from me just a week ago, arms folded, sliding over a 1-paragraph severance letter and the words, "Take everything that's yours." Now he was learning exactly what that meant. That evening, I got an email not from Pacific Horizon, but directly from the tech firm's communications director. "Hi, Marianne. I understand you're no longer with Pacific Horizon Media and Events. A shame, considering every product launch we've done with them was a result of your preparation. Are you available for independent consultation?" That email changed everything. Within 48 hours, I had signed my first official client under my new business name, MW Event Solutions. Scope of work: full technical consulting for all U.S. product launches for the next 12 months, custom workflows, equipment recommendations, live support. And my name was right there on the contract. Not hidden in fine print, not borrowed. Mine. By the following Monday, Pacific Horizon's product launch had been reduced to a static presentation. No live stream, no interactive panel, just a slideshow and a podium mic that cut out every few minutes. The tech firm quietly canceled their multi-year event contract later that week. Renee forwarded me the internal memo. Colin blamed resourcing complications and unforeseen staffing transitions. He never said my name, but I didn't need him to. My name was already in other inboxes recommended by that same tech firm to 3 of their partner companies, all asking the same thing. Are you available? We're looking for someone reliable. We heard what you did. That Friday, a package arrived on my doorstep. Inside was a small glass plaque. It wasn't flashy, just a single line of engraving in recognition of everything you held together. It was from Renee. I stood there for a long time, plaque in hand, blinking back tears. Not because I needed validation, but because after so many years of being unseen, someone had finally noticed. I sent her a thank you message. She didn't reply right away. Later, I'd find out she was prepping for her final exit interview. She'd had enough too. Colin had underestimated the cost of losing me. What he didn't realize yet was that the fallout was only just beginning. You can fire a person, but you can't pull the foundation out from under a building and expect it to keep standing. By the 3rd week, Pacific Horizon had lost 2 more clients. It wasn't loud or dramatic, no scandal, no leaked memos, just quiet cancellations one after another. Events postponed indefinitely, budgets reevaluated, decision-makers ignoring Colin's follow-up emails. I wasn't celebrating, at least not in the champagne-popping way you might expect. Because while Pacific Horizon was unraveling, I was drowning in opportunity. Word had spread. That woman who saved the West Coast Education Summit, the one who built Pacific Horizon's entire AV infrastructure on her own dime and then walked away with it. Yeah, her. Suddenly, it wasn't just clients reaching out. Vendors, equipment suppliers, and venue managers I'd worked alongside for over a decade were now calling me directly. Marianne, if you ever need lighting rigs for your own shows, we'll give you a great deal. Hey, we've got some beta gear. We'd love for you to test if you're interested. We're short-staffed for the Education Futures Summit. Any chance you could consult? The irony wasn't lost on me. At Pacific Horizon, I was the person people emailed only after exhausting every other option. Now I was the first name on the list. Renee officially left Pacific Horizon that Wednesday. No drama, no farewell speech, just a quiet lunch with 2 colleagues who had already handed in their notice. They offered me a loyalty bonus to stay. She told me over the phone that evening, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Can you believe that I laughed? Did you take it? Nope. I accepted a job with one of the nonprofit clients you worked with last year. Better salary, better hours, and they actually asked me what I wanted out of the role. I was proud of her, not just for leaving, but for finally choosing herself. That was the real revenge, wasn't it? Not watching a company fail, but watching good people recognize their worth and walk out on their own terms. On Friday afternoon, I got a call I didn't expect. It was from Naomi Carter, CFO of Pacific Horizon's parent company. I'd only met her once at a corporate holiday party where she spent 20 minutes talking to Colin about quarterly performance indicators, while I poured wine for the sponsors. Marianne, good to speak with you, she said coolly. Likewise, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I wanted to follow up regarding the West Coast Summit recovery and the product launch situation. We've reviewed the recent event outcomes, client losses, and technical issues, Naomi said. It's clear Pacific Horizon underestimated your role in the infrastructure. That's on us. There was a long pause before she continued. I'd like to offer you a formal consulting retainer directly through corporate Not Pacific Horizon. We'd like your support on 3 upcoming projects. Your experience is difficult to replace. It was almost an apology. Almost. But more importantly, it was recognition from the top, the kind that actually meant something. I told her I'd consider it. The next morning, I emailed her a quote. My rate, my terms. No discounts. No favors. She agreed within the hour. Meanwhile, Colin wasn't doing so well. Renee was still connected to a few people inside the company and kept me updated. Word was that senior leadership had begun auditing budgets, client feedback, and project timelines. Apparently, someone had finally asked the right question. How did we let her go without knowing what she was responsible for? According to Renee, Colin's answer had been, we thought she was just operations. Just operations. The person who built the media systems from scratch. The person who trained every intern, wrote the setup guides, and managed every major broadcast Pacific Horizon had ever delivered. It was laughable. But it was also typical. Companies love to throw around words like team and family when things are going well. But when money gets tight, the first people on the chopping block are the ones who say yes too often and make miracles look routine. By the end of that month, Pacific Horizon lost its largest annual client, a healthcare group that had contracted them for 10 straight years. I knew the organizer. She sent me a LinkedIn message. They said you weren't with the company anymore. I told them no, Marianne, no contract. Just wanted you to know. That was the moment it truly hit me. I hadn't just been part of Pacific Horizon. I had been Pacific Horizon for a long time. They just never bothered to see it until it was too late. And yet I didn't feel rage or even triumph, just clarity. Because when you spend years doing the work of 5 people, constantly proving your value, constantly being told you're lucky to be there, you start to believe it's true. That being needed is the same as being respected. But they're not the same. And now that I'd finally drawn that line, I wasn't going back. Not for Pacific Horizon. Not for anyone. 3 months after I left Pacific Horizon, I stood backstage at the Bayview Civic Auditorium clipboard in hand headset snug against my ear, watching 800 guests take their seats for the Education Futures Gala. My show. Not Pacific Horizon's, not Colin's, mine. MW Event Solutions had landed 5 contracts in 8 weeks. Our fall calendar was full. I'd hired 2 part-time AV techs and a virtual assistant. I wasn't just busy, I was in control. Camera 2, stand by, I said into the mic. We're live in 3, 2. The live stream ran flawlessly. Smooth, polished, precise. The way it had always been, only now, the credit was mine. Later that night, I checked my email. Among client feedback was one subject line that made me pause Pacific Horizon request. It was from Naomi Carter. Marianne, I hope you're well. Pacific Horizon has undergone internal changes. Colin Wright has resigned. 2 other senior staff members are gone. We'd like you to return not to your old role, but to lead a new division reporting directly to me. I read it twice. Leadership, authority, autonomy. But I'd already built something better. I replied, thank you for the generous offer. I'm proud of my work at Pacific Horizon, but I've moved on. MW Event Solutions is thriving, built on values of accountability, respect, and ownership. I wish you the best. Happy to discuss licensing our technical frameworks, but not employment. Send. Final. A week later, I spoke on a panel for women in media tech. What happens when they replace you and you replace yourself with something better? Afterward, a young woman approached. I was told people like me don't last in this industry. I was thinking of quitting. But your story. It reminded me I'm not crazy, that some of us do everything and get none of the credit. You're not crazy, I said. Document everything. Put your name on your work. and never wait for permission to own your value. By quarter's end, Pacific Horizon had lost 4 major clients. Meanwhile, MW Event Solutions signed 2 national nonprofits and began negotiating a licensing deal for systems I'd developed years ago. Late nights no one knew about done because I cared. Now they're lucky if they can get me on the phone. At 56, I'd built more than a business. I'd claimed my agency ownership and respect. When Colin told me, "Take everything that's yours," he had no idea that meant my power. And I'll never hand it over for free again. I want to hear what you think about how I handled this. Do you believe I made the right call by walking away from a company that didn't value me, even when they came back offering more? Share your thoughts in the comments, not just for me, but for anyone out there stuck in a similar situation. Your perspective might be the encouragement someone else needs to finally stand up for themselves. And here's my advice from someone who's lived it: never let anyone convince you that being needed is the same as being respected. Document your work, put your name on it, and protect your value, like it's the most expensive piece of gear you own, because it is. Don't wait for recognition to give you permission to own your worth. Build it, claim it, and never hand it over for free again. You owe that to yourself.